Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beating the Odds podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Today's guest is Brian Dockery, and he is the founder and president of the Love Green Company. Brian, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. We've got a big audience at Hidden Star and Galaxy, and we're all excited to hear the story of Love Green and how you started it. But before we get into that, can you kind of give us some background on where you grew up and your family and education and all that?
Yeah, thanks. So I grew up in a small town, North Carolina, a very loving family, majority blue collar family. I was the first in my family to sort of leave. And so growing up, I think going to college was sort of our measure of success. I went to a school called North Carolina A&T. I got an ag education degree there. But growing up, my family, we were very tight knit. My parents divorced when I was about 3 years old. And we moved into my grandparents' house, and it was probably 10 to 12 of us in the house at one time. So we had a very tight-knit family, very supportive. But my mom, ended up moving, and I remember I looked at her when I graduated high school, and I told her I wasn't coming back. That area, there weren't a lot of opportunities there, but I knew in my heart I wanted more than what I saw, so I told her I wasn't coming back, and learn from things that you see. And sometimes you learn from things that you don't see. And I knew that where I had a big vision, and I knew I wanted more. And so I went on to college there, and I was in music, I was in the band, and I wanted to go to college to be in the band. And one of my early, I would say, achievements and goals was I wanted to be in this big band. And so I remember when I achieved that, we were standing out there at 5 a.m., early one morning, and the drum majors are, they're mean, they're coming by. We're standing at attention. And it dawned on me that if you want to do something, you can do it. Even coming from a small town, that was a really big deal. To leave where I was in a small town to go to, a large university and becoming the band. So I think that set the foundation for success and ambition. And from there, that was kind of the foundation for kind of achieving and aspiring and doing great things. So
A&T, for everybody, is a great historic member of the HBCU community. It's a fantastic university.
some of the best times of my life for sure.
So you get out of A&T, you've got an agricultural degree. I'm assuming you didn't start this company right then. What about your early career? Where did you work? Where did you get the skill set and all that?
So when I graduated college, I went on to do an intern at a company called Cargill. It's one of the largest privately owned companies in the country. There in Minneapolis, and did an intern with the intent to take over a role at the company as a commodity trader. And probably after about 3 months or so, I didn't like it. I hated it. So I moved back to North Carolina, and I stayed in Greensboro versus going back to where I grew up and interviewing for jobs, all of the major corporations. So I had a degree in education, but I wanted to be in business. I wanted to go on with a corporation, but I had a teaching degree because I'm by nature a teacher. And so I went on to interview for about 6 months with all these major companies, Ford, Kellogg, GE, and I was turned down every single time. And but I would get a lot of great feedback, like, you're exactly what we're looking for. You have great skills, and you interview great. But they would always turn me down, and I could never understand why. So I remember I got to the end of my rope, and I was in Indianapolis and interviewing with a company called Eli Lilly. And Dow called me, a company called Dow Chemical at the time. They called me while I was in Indianapolis, and they said, "Hey, we want you to come and interview with us." And I said, "Look, if I don't get this job at Dow, I'm just going to go teach." And it turns out I didn't get the job with Lilly, but I got the job with Dow. And so I accepted that offer, and I started in sales in Greenville, North Carolina, managing kind of a sales territory in the Southeast U.S., launching some products with them, and just moved up within the company. Moved around, market segmentation, different roles with the company. And that's what ultimately led me to Dallas.
So you now live in Dallas, Texas?
Yes.
How are you liking Texas?
I like it. I've been here 18 years now, so I guess I'm official.
Well, you're still on probation. You don't have your Texas passport yet, but we're happy you're here. So you did that job for Dow for a while. It brought you to Texas, right? And then at some point you felt like there's more, or you got inspired by something and you started your own company. Can you tell us that story?
I was sitting in the parking lot of a Lowe's in Florence, South Carolina, and I got a call saying, "Hey, we like what you've done here in the Southeast. We want you to move to Texas." And at that point, I'd never been to Texas. And so they said, "We want you to go to a place called Plainview." And I'm thinking, Plainview, that sounds like maybe outside of Dallas or something. Let me look it
Oh
up.
Lord, no. Oh Lord, no.
I look it up and it's like far north of Lubbock. And I said, "Guys, I'll live in Lubbock, but I'm not going to Plainview." And so I went there. I launched a product called Wide Strike. It's a cotton, what we know now as like genetically modified seed. And so I launched that, set up our distributor network in the Southeast. At the time, was about 30% of U.S. cotton was in West Texas. So it was a huge market. I did that, set up the distributor network. That went well. And I got the opportunity to go to corporate as our market segmentation manager back in Indianapolis. I did that for about a year. That went well. And then I got the opportunity to come back to Dallas. And so about 2 years after coming to Dallas, it was the kind of the onset of the recession in 2009 and 10, and I was laid off. And I remember thinking in that moment, how am I going to pay my bills? Like
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. What am I going to do? And in the very next moment, I had the vision to mentor youth and create an organization that gave back to youth, but I didn't have time because I was traveling so much. And so I said, this is the opportunity I've been praying for. So I started an organization there, mentoring young people. Based on how I grew up, it wasn't a lot of opportunity, so I definitely wanted to give back to them and kind of show them and expose them to opportunities. So I did that, but I also probably
That
about
was
a
the
year or
teacher
two,
in you coming out, right?
that was the teacher in me coming out, right? And then after that, I had the opportunity. I had more opportunities. I worked for a multinational company based out of Tokyo, and you're running their North American business here. I went on to work for a couple other companies, different opportunities, leading business, and it led me to a company, ultimately a biotech company focused on organic materials. And so that company, we made a virus, but it was completely benign, and it was an organic and a biological insecticide that was for row crops. And so I became very sensitive to like natural and organic materials, eco-friendly solutions and that kind of thing. And I was running a US business for them, and I grew the company. They had no commercial presence in the US. And so they brought me on to grow the business. I took them from nothing to millions in 2 years. And they brought in their team from Europe to take the company to scale it to be sold. And so they said, we're going to go in a different direction, that kind of thing. I guess it's kind of like the head coach bringing in his own team. And so they let me go there. And so I was looking for my next opportunity. And I was sitting in a restaurant meeting with someone about something completely different. And an idea came back to me from a year before that. I was on vacation in Florida, and I overheard a lady complaining about her paper straws and how they disintegrate in your mouth and they were nasty. And she said, "It's a shame that we can't get better straws." And something in my head just said, you can do something about that. But I didn't have time because I was traveling, but I started researching, and then it completely blew me away. I mean, we use 500 million straws a day, right? There's 400 million metric tons of waste that's produced, and 40% of that comes from the food service industry, right? So I wanted to do something about it, but I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to do it. So I was sitting in this restaurant, and I looked down the bar and I saw straws, and that idea came back to me. So I asked for the owner, and I told her that I had a company that could supply her better straws. And so having run business, I knew how to put things together. I knew how to, things rolled up to me. I knew how to marketing, sales, operations. I knew how to put everything together. So I said, "Hey, I have a company that can supply you better straws." And I wasn't thinking she was going to say, "Let's do it." And she said, "Okay, yeah, I'd like to have some of those." And I said, "Okay." And in my head, I was like, how am I going to Okay. So I went home and figured out how to source sustainable straws, and the rest is history.
The old saying is that, come up with a better mousetrap. You decided to come up with a better straw, and who knew that you use 500 million straws a day?
Yep. Yep. So
Well,
so people think that the eco-friendly alternative to plastic is paper, but there's so many other options out there, compostable options even that look and feel just like plastic that maintain their integrity in your drink, that I wanted to
no
show
kidding.
them. So the first one we supplied them was a straw made from avocado pits. They're made in Monterrey, Mexico, and we started supplying them straws, and she said, well, do you have cups? I said, yeah, I have cups. Do you have containers? I was like, yeah, I have containers.
You didn't have any of that.
I didn't have any of it.
That's
So
awesome.
she said, do you have this and that? And I was like, yeah, I have that. And I would go home and figure out how to source it. And so when I started, there's this photo that I keep in my phone. I started stacking boxes in a extra bedroom that I had, and with a desk in the corner, and there's sample boxes over here. And that's how we started. I just started sourcing products as they needed it. And I eventually outgrew a bedroom that I had. And so I started renting a storage, and I rented a 10 by 5. And then I outgrew that one, and I rented a 9 by 8. And I outgrew that, and a 10 by 10, and two 10 by 10s, and three 10 by 10s. And then at a certain
No
point, it
kidding.
just started growing. And then I needed to bring on a supplier for a company that they only delivered truckloads, but they wouldn't deliver to the storage place.
Yeah.
So I needed to find a warehouse. So I started cold calling warehouses and asking them could I lease some of their space to be able to receive in a truck. And I eventually found a company that would allow me to lease their warehouse space. That worked out. I moved all of our things from the storage to the warehouse space. I was able to take the truck, and from then I started to scale. But I think at that point, it was more about being in an environment where my mind could catch up to my vision. Yeah. So that was the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And so I started a company supplying restaurants as restaurants are shutting down. And so
Great timing. Great timing.
it was sort of counterintuitive in a way, but we became essential. And so we could still go out and talk to restaurants while everyone else had to shelter in place. And then they started placing an emphasis on their packaging materials because everything shifted to go. And so the food had to maintain its integrity and presentation during delivery. So that's how we started.
And no kid, this is right in 2020 when everything is shutting down.
February 27th, I was sitting in the restaurant. March 31st, my LLC was approved and registered. April 1st, was my first day getting my bank account. We shipped and we got our office space. And June 11th is when we shipped our first order to that restaurant. First day in the office, our first day as a business was April 1st, 2020. And so we went back and forth over the next month or two, just trying to figure the selection of products they wanted. And June 11th, I was driving and they called me and said, hey, how do we put in an order? Like, I want to place an order now. Because once we decided the products they wanted to use, she went silent. But what she was doing was trying to use our inventory. And so she called me and was like, hey, I'm ready to place an order now. And so I literally did a U-turn in the road and went back to my house and packed the order and delivered it to her in my car.
That's awesome. So 9 weeks from the time you incorporated to the time you ship your first product. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. So now we're coming up on 6 years, right? You started out with one client. Are they still a client of yours?
That one is not, but they referred us to another restaurant that was in their same hospitality group, and they were our customer up until last year when they closed. And so we still have customers from 2020 that we service today.
Yeah. Now, is there a significant cost difference between, we'll call them sustainable straws, eco-friendly straws, and the plastic junk that everybody uses for a long time?
There is. It can be about 30 to 40%. But what we found is that customers are willing to pay for sustainability. And not just straws, but packaging as well. If you can imagine going to your favorite steakhouse and getting a steak in a styrofoam container. You would think in your head, how good is that steak really if they're not willing to focus on their packaging and not just the food? So if a restaurant or an organization has quality packaging, the presentation, how you present your food, it gives an automatic intrinsic value in the mind of a customer that if they're willing to do this right, then they're willing to also focus on everything else, right? So sustainable practices in business is absolutely critical.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Sometimes searching for small business funding can make you feel like a lone wolf in a vast galaxy of stars. But there is help. Apply for a Galaxy grant, powered by Hidden Star. It's a 30-second application process, eligible for all women and minority business owners, and they are always 100% free to apply. So remember, you are not alone. We are here to help. Apply for a Galaxy grant today at galaxyofstars.org.
So when you were a kid, did you ever dream about owning your own company? Were there entrepreneurs in your family, or is this just something you came to later?
Yeah, so Not so much as a kid. So I think the feeling I had when they walked in and laid me off like that, it planted a seed in me that said I really didn't like someone else having that level of agency over my livelihood. And that's where it
Yeah.
started. And so, although I work for other companies, I didn't like someone else having that much control over my livelihood. I even have drawings from 15 years ago of me just kind of sketching what my company would be, what it would look like, the logo, the tagline. I just started dreaming in that way, kind of conceptually what it would look like. And I knew I wanted to, but I didn't know how, I didn't know when, I didn't know what. And when I saw those straws in the bar, the idea came to me and I was like, I can do that. That's when it became tangible. I'm the first entrepreneur in my family, the first in my family to leave high school and go to college to do a number of things.
Were you lucky enough in your earlier career and maybe even still to have mentors, experienced folks kind of giving you advice and counsel, or you just figured it out as you went?
Yeah, so growing up, I really gravitated to male teachers at my school because my mother and father divorced and he really wasn't in my life. So I really gravitated toward men, like coaches and my ag teacher, for example. You know, they used to just have these sayings that still stick with me to this day. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Just kind of, to them, they're just doing their job. But
Yeah.
to me, they represented a sort of a father. So that's kind of high school. But as I've grown, I think just constantly putting myself in an environment of people who I admire, not just in business, but character, from podcasts to speakers to people,
Right.
whether I know them up close or not. A mentor doesn't always have to be somebody that's personal to you that you can sit across from. A mentor can be someone that you identify as they have something that I could use. So I've had both, but I think, I was constantly putting myself in a place where I'm, getting the right knowledge.
Well, you're obviously a smart guy, but there are a lot of smart people who don't understand how important it is to learn from other people, whether you know them or not, right? A lot of people come out of college, well, I'm done. I'm done learning. I'll just go start doing now. So that's awesome. So you started out with one customer in almost 6 years ago, and now how many customers do you have? And you've scaled the company. How many customers?
Right now we have over 40 accounts.
Oh, wow.
And they range from fast casual to fine dining. We service entire school districts. We supply hospitals, municipalities, entire cities, state buildings within cities. And so, but our main, business is the food service industry, like restaurants, because that's where the largest amount of food service waste is generated. So hotels and that kind of thing. And so that's where we focus today.
Now, is it mainly the Dallas-Fort Worth area? Is it Texas, or is it anywhere in the world?
Mainly the U.S. We're mainly focused in and around Dallas. There's so many hospitality and restaurant groups here and opportunities here. We really don't have to go outside of Dallas, honestly, but we do. We ship regionally and we ship from coast to coast. We have an affiliate network of 17 distribution centers where we can either ship it from Dallas or we can pull it from an affiliate warehouse anywhere in the country. So we can service literally every part of the country.
Yeah, and get it there quick, right? With that network of DCs, you can probably get them straws tomorrow morning.
Yeah, pretty quick. Yep. And that's key in restaurants because they don't have a lot of storage space, so they have to have it fairly quick.
It's a great story. It's a great story. What has been the hardest part so far of the whole thing, the whole journey?
Several. I remember early on in our first or second year, when the supply chain was tightening, companies were calling us to buy their inventory. Costs were going up.
Right.
And they just didn't have the capacity to continue. So they were asking us, they were liquidating their inventory. So we were buying their inventory for pennies on the dollar, which ended up being good for us. But that market forces is challenging, particularly with tariffs. A lot of our suppliers, they source globally. Some are here in the U.S. That's been a challenge, particularly earlier this year, because what was happening was our cost was going up, but companies were looking to cut costs. So we had upward and downward pressure on pricing. And so it was a very competitive situation we had to navigate through, because you have to maintain profitability, but you also have to protect your share.
Right.
And so that was challenging. And that also forced us to continue to diversify our supply chain. And the second thing is people. Early on, I bought an SUV and I literally would pack my SUV with boxes and deliver them, whatever it took. And so people got used to that level of service. Whatever I needed to do to make it happen, that's what I did. They delivered an order, they missed something, they needed it right away, I would go do it. And so I think scaling that level of service and that expectation was somewhat of a challenge, but it's like reproducing that level of service in other people and scaling that, because you can't do that at scale.
Yeah, it seems like if you're selling a product that has a price premium compared to some of the commodity stuff, that you do have to optimize for customer satisfaction. You do have to optimize for service levels that are not kind of normal in the other side.
Yeah. And that was a way we grew early on, because customers were looking for service. So we're called Love Green because we serve at Love and supply green products. So it's not just about supplying products; it's about the way we do it. So how we do it is just as important as what we do.
Right.
And so that level of service, customers were not used to it because they're used to companies that run their business on an app and staying on the phone on customer service. Customer service also took a hit if you're talking to a person with AI and having to stay on hold. And so I wanted to create a more personable experience and not just delivering products, but also if you had an issue, we could take care of it. And so scaling that, I want to do that at scale and not compromise that experience because we're growing. And then people. And so consistent people that embody the vision that you have, the type of qualities, the characteristics you have. And I think that those are sort of some challenges either we had or that we still deal with.
Yeah. It sounds like that from the story you told and you're getting one order from one place. It doesn't sound like a terribly capital-intensive business. Did you have to go out and raise money or get bank loans or whatever to finance this, or were the inventory costs low enough or the billing cycle short enough that you were able to start this thing with a fairly modest amount of capital?
Yeah, so when I first started, I put $500 in our business account just to transfer something. And so with that, I sourced our first few boxes of product, just some samples of straws that allowed them to see them. But we turn our inventory, every 7 to 10 days. So it wasn't very capital intensive up front because we had 1-2 suppliers.
Right.
And they were paying. I still have my first check on this wall back here. It's like $495. So once I delivered the product, they paid for it right then and there. So we were literally profitable from day one. We were able to buy just what they needed, to supply them what they needed. But as we've grown and expanded, customers, they scale, they need terms and that kind of thing. So we leverage like lines of credit and that kind of thing since we've grown, but we don't have any venture capital or anything like that. So we leverage.
And you still own the whole company, right?
Yep.
So I always ask this question: What's been more important to you, the ambition or the talent? Or were you just built to run a company or start and grow a company, or is it that you're really good at it, or you really want to be good at it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that you have to have an astronomical amount of conviction for what you're doing, because it is extremely difficult. There's some things that talent won't take you. You need talent. So ironically, what I'd done in my previous company, where I scaled that company with private equity capital, was the same principles that I took into my own company. And when you know how to do something, you know how to do it. Right. So the things that I was doing, setting up distribution networks, logistics, marketing, all of those things came to me. So those are things that you naturally just work through. And it was something that we were doing that was new. And so I basically took those same principles and applied them to what I was doing with Love Green and supplying those products. I would equate talent to a skill, which I think is knowledge, the know-how. And the other side of that is the grit and having a conviction for what you do. Because if you have a lot of talent, but you don't have the work ethic and the grit to support that talent, it's not going to happen. And then the other way around too, if you have a work ethic, but you don't have the skill and the knowledge and the talent to inform what you're doing, it's also not going to work. So you need a combination of both. But I would say if I had to say something was more important before you do anything, you have to have an astronomical amount of conviction for what you're doing. Because if
Yeah,
you don't, you're not gonna
for
make
sure.
it. You're gonna quit.
You know, I was being interviewed one time about one of the companies I started, and they asked me that same question. And I said, every time I start a company, I convince myself that if you don't do business with me, there's something wrong with you. Nothing wrong with me. I'm good.
100%. And we don't have contracts. We have supply agreements for special order kind of things, but I don't
Right.
hold our customers in contracts because I feel like if there's a reason you don't want to do business with us, either there's something going on your side or there's something going on with us where we're not serving you to the point where you want to stay with us. So if you
Right,
want to
right.
go, we'll allow you to go. But I want to serve you to a point where you don't want to leave.
Yeah.
That's the philosophy we have.
Well, that's a great philosophy. So, you know, you grow up in rural North Carolina. You're in a house with a bunch of folks. You go to a really great HBCU. Are there any challenges that you faced because you're a minority entrepreneur that you would not have faced otherwise? Do you think?
Well, I only know my experience, so I wouldn't necessarily know the other side of it. Honestly, I would say being a minority entrepreneur is probably an advantage because there are things that I faced growing up that gave me sort of this, going back to talking about the conviction for what I do. I
Right.
have a level of grit that comes with me. No one gave me anything. We had a largely blue collar family where they worked. My mother worked third shift for a long time. My grandmother, they all worked. My granddad was blue collar. He was a farmer. So they all put their hands to the plow, quite
Right.
literally, and worked. And so no one handed me something to say, hey, here's a loan to do this or that. I had to start from where I was. When I moved away to Minneapolis was my first time my mom flew on an airplane was when we drove up to Minneapolis and she flew back. And so I think the level of work ethic and the grit that I gained over the years for having to just work for everything that I've gotten, I think it serves as an advantage in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship for sure.
How many people do you employ now at Love Green?
Yeah, we have a small but mighty team. We have a combination of about 12 of us, a combination of employees and contractors.
So you had an idea, you got laid off, you now run a profitable company that provides 12 jobs. See, that's the thing. Good for you. Congratulations. And that's why you're here. We're here to celebrate this kind of success. It's just awesome hearing about it. So as we wrap up, if you had one piece of advice to give to young entrepreneurs, what would it be?
Just one? Oh my goodness. I think before you start a business, you really need to understand yourself. Have a high level of self-awareness of what do I want to accomplish, have a vision for your life, and reverse engineer that into, the what will take care of itself, the how will take care of itself, but you have to have a very keen understanding of who you are as a person and what problems you want to solve. Who am I? And how do I want to employ my gifts, my skills to solve a problem? There's a lot of rhetoric and a lot of things on the internet that just talks about starting a business for the sake of starting a business. But I think the purpose of business is to add value and solve a problem,
Yeah.
and not just simply for a vanity project. And so with us, we're committed to sustainability and reducing waste and the impact of single-use plastic and replacing those with eco-friendly alternatives. Love green.
Green.
So yeah, it's just having that conviction for what you do and self-awareness, and then that fruit will show itself.
So what does the future look like? Can you get to 100 employees or 15? What do you think the scale is for Love Green?
To put it in perspective, the largest player food service distributor in our space is about $58 billion, and they own 17% of the market. The smallest one in the space, they do about 400 million. And there's several others that are smaller than that, but the sheer scale is, the opportunity is there. Focused on now is taking the level of service that we've been able to provide our customers and add technology to it, add efficiency,
Right.
platforms where customers can use that to be more efficient. And then also scaling within the industry that we're in right now, the hospitality, the school districts, municipalities, they all need this product and they need to be educated and become aware about it. Corporations and entities and municipalities they're just not aware of the opportunity. They think because the company offers them a plastic bowl or a spoon or a cup or a straw, that's all that's available. So they only
Right.
focus on price. Our job is to go in and show them alternatives and show them how they can scale that within their companies because customers want that. If you
Yeah.
think about how subconsciously, how good do you feel when you toss a compostable salad bowl versus a styrofoam container? Subconsciously, you feel better about that. So customers want companies to help them do good for the environment by sustainable practices, the products they use, where they source their products. And so that's what we're here to do, is to streamline that process from an operation standpoint and also revolutionize the service, how we serve our customers. And so the sky is really the limit. It's no exaggeration that we could be $100 million company in 5 years.
We're all rooting for you for sure. It's interesting to hear Jeff Bezos talk 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that Amazon is not a technology company. Amazon is not a product company. Amazon is not none of that. Amazon is a customer service company that is optimized for customer service. And you sound exactly like that. So I don't know that you'll get to a trillion, but hopefully you will. But yeah, no, it's a very exciting, very cool story, and we couldn't be any more excited about it. So for the people listening to this, if they want to learn more or buy something from you guys, how would they get in touch with you guys? And we'll put it up on the screen.
Of course, of course. So you can reach us online at thelovegreenco.com. That's thelovegreen, THELOVE green, CO.com. That's our website. We have products, on the site for sale, but my primary business is mainly going into hospitality groups and restaurants, hotels, hospitality. Those in-house accounts is really our focus. We're going to have some opportunities here shortly for smaller package sizes for people, your homes, offices, to buy smaller packaging for your home and that kind of thing to replace your plastic and styrofoam. But you can reach us on all social media platforms like Instagram at The Love Green Co., Facebook, just search our company, LinkedIn, just search The Love Green Company, and or at The Love Green Co. on platforms like Instagram. And if you have questions about the company or how you get started or you want to become a customer, just email info@thelovegreenco.com and we'll get you taken care of.
Awesome. Well, listen, Brian, what a treat to have you on Beating the Odds, and we will get this out there and have as many people as possible learn your inspiring story. But thank you very much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.